In this video, we're going to go over the group exercise for the Ramp 4 Superelevation here in Chapter 6. The first thing we need to do is open up the corridors file in our Data 6 folder. The reason we're opening the corridors file, we could open the civil geometry or the terrain as well, but we just need to have a file open because here in a second we're going to create a new file called Superelevation. In that file we'll put our superelevation section and lanes and actually calculate the superelevation in that file, and then once we're done with that we will reference that file into the corridors file and attach or assign the corridor section to the actual corridor itself. Before we go into step number 2, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at our Ramp 2 corridor here that we have here, and we're going to look at one of the templates along Ramp 4. So when I open up Ramp 4 template, to look at the Ramp 4 template, all I have to do is grab one of the template handlers here, and I'm going to go ahead and edit the template drop. When the template drop opens, the one thing I'm going to look at is the points of the pavement and how wide the pavement is. So here is our origin point. If I double click on that one, you'll see that it's called concrete TCL. And the one thing I'm looking for is does it have this superelevation flag? If this superelevation flag is enabled or checked, has a check in it, it'll be available to the superelevation tool, and it'll choose that point to help rotate that pavement either about this point or that point. So to check the other points along this pavement, we only have 2, so those are probably the only 2 that we have. I'm going to go ahead and double click on this one as well. Again, this one is enabled as far as the superelevation flag goes. And as far as any other points, typically just the pavement points have the superelevation flag applied to them. So those are the 2 points. Now the other thing I want to take a look at here is the width of this lane, and it's 18 feet. So since it's 18 feet, I need to have a superelevation shape that will be 18 feet wide, and we'll show you how to create that a little bit later on in the exercise. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. Since this file is open, I'm just going to go ahead and create my superelevation file. That's in step number 2. So we're just going to do a file new. Be no wizard if you get this option. I'm going to set my seed file to be 2D, which it defaults to. And so I'm just going to go ahead and call this the correct file. I'm going to put it into my Data 6 folder. And I'm going to call this Superelevation underscore J5P3181, which is the job number, and then I'm going to add the extension on .dgn. If you wanted to, you could change the description. I typically leave that as is, then I can tell what seed file I used when I created this file. So once you have everything filled out just like so, you just have to hit OK. I'm going to go ahead and check in the corridors file. Once the file is created, we're going to go ahead and set the geographic coordinate system in step number 3. So we're going to go ahead and go up to our workflows up here, and we're going to go down to the reality modeling workflow. I know in that workflow that there is a geographic coordinate system icon that we can set our geographic coordinate system. Since I already have 3 files, the civil geometry, the terrain, and the corridors file, in my data folder, I know that those are all set with the geographic coordinate system, so I'm just going to set this geographic coordinate system from the option called From File. So I'm going to click on that. In my Data 6 folder, I can select any of those 3 files that I mentioned. I'll do civil geometry, and when I do that, I'm going to take the default model, which is set, and actually both of them are set to the same geographic coordinate system, so it really wouldn't matter which one you picked. I'm just going to take the default model and hit OK, and you can see that my geographic coordinate system is now set. The next thing we need to do is reference in the civil geometry file. So we're going to go to our Attach tool. do a Tools, Attach. We're going to select the civil geometry file out of the Data 6 folder, and we're going to hit OK. And select OK again. Once that's attached, you can go ahead and do a Fit View to fit the civil geometry. Again, I'm going to zoom into my ramp 4 area here. And on step number 8, we're going to go ahead and create a section for the ramp 4. So I'm going to go back to my Open Roads modeling workflow. I'm going to slide over to my Superelevation tools. I'm going to go to the Create tools, and I'm going to select Create Superelevation Section. First thing it's going to ask me is the name for my Superelevation section. I'm going to call it Ramp 4. Then it's going to ask me to locate the corridor or alignment. We have an alignment since we have the civil geometry file referenced in. I'm going to select the Ramp 4. Next, it's asking me, where do I want to start this section? Well, typically we do this at station beginning of the alignment, which is station, in this case, station 0. So I'm going to drag my cursor all the way back past the start point and set that, and then it's asking for an end station. I could do the same thing, slide down, or if you look at the heads-up prompt, you can just hit the Alt key and that will set it to the end of the alignment, and then all you have to do is left click to accept that. Now for a transition length, we have 2 curves on this alignment. So what I want to do is I want to just make a single section, because the design speed for both curves on this alignment will be the same. So I'm going to use a large tangent length that'll be greater than the distance between the 2 curves. So 1,000 feet should be good. And I'm just going to left click to accept that, and my section is created. Now you'll notice that the tool is still asking you for more information, and so what it's doing is it's going right into the creation of the lanes. And so we're going to go ahead and create the lanes as well. Now currently with the program, there is kind of a bug in the program, and whereas when we create our lanes, our last lane has to be 12 foot wide. So we're going to create 2 lanes, one 6 foot wide and then the other 12 foot wide, which equals the 18-foot distance that we have in our template. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. So the first one that we're going to create, we're going to enter the lane name 0 to 6 feet, just like so on my cursor there. I'm going to left click to accept that. It will be a primary lane. It'll be on the left side of center line. The inside offset from the baseline is 0. It's going to be 6 foot wide, and we're going to have a 2% cross slope. And the 2% is going to be a positive 2% because we're going to go up from the baseline. And eventually that 2% will match into the Route 54 alignment and superelevation, which we'll talk more about in Road 2. Now, once that lane is created, you can see it was created out on my screen, it's asking for the next lane that we want to create. And this lane will be called 6 to 18 foot. So we're going to change the name. We're going to go 6 to 18. We're going to accept that name. Again, this will be a primary lane. It'll be on the left side. The inside edge will be next to the 6 foot lane that we have out there already, so we'll be 6 foot over. So we'll enter a 6 and we'll hit enter. The width of this lane will be 12 foot. We'll accept that. And again, this will be a positive 2% up from the baseline, and we'll accept that. So once we're done creating that second lane, we can hit F4 to get out of the tool, and you can see that we have 2 lanes. And if you select your superelevation section, you'll see some information pop up on your screen if you zoom in close enough. So there's our 6 foot lane, and then there's our 12 foot lane. Again, due to a bug in the program, again the lane that's furthest from the baseline has to be 12 foot wide. Otherwise, the superelevation tool does not calculate the superelevation correctly. Okay, on page 628, we're going to go ahead and calculate our superelevation. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out just a little bit. I want to go up to my superelevation tools. We're going to look at our options that we have up here under Calculate. We have Calculate Superelevation. We have our Edit Superelevation Rule file, which you typically don't need to do. But in this video, I'm just going to go ahead and show you something real quick here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit Superelevation Rule. I'm going to go ahead and open up the MoDOT Superelevation Rule file, which is just called modot.xml. And in there you'll see some of our settings that we have out there. We have our station rounding to the nearest 0.01 foot as far as stationing goes. Same thing on the cross slope, 0.01. Our max E method is either 8% or 4%. In this case, this is a rule job, so it will be 8%. So you don't have to set it here. I'm just showing you what options we have. The runoff length method, it will use an equation called 323 in the AASHTO 2011 Green Book, and tables, the table 316 out of the AASHTO Green Book to calculate our runoff length. The pivot method, we've got several different pivot methods. In this case, we're going to be on the left edge of or actually the right edge. In this case, we don't have to set it here again. We're just looking at the options. And then the design speed can be anywhere from 70 all the way down to 30. Equations, we use again equation to calculate our transition. Our run out and transition options. If there is a transition option is linear, percentage on tangent is 2/3. If there is a spiral, it will use the spiral length. And we start with the inside lane rotation with the outside. Meaning if you have a divided highway situation, both transitions will start and stop at the same station value. Curve overlap adjustments, this will automatically use a planar option to correct the overlap issues. And we don't have any key stations or runtime variables. So we're just, again, looking at those options. We're just going to close it down. We're not going to save it. And we're going to go ahead and calculate our superelevation for this section here that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and select Calculate Superelevation. I'm going to locate the first superelevation section. It's really our only section because since we used that long transition length, there was only one created. So all you have to do is select the section and then just do a right click to complete. And then it will ask you for a rules file. So you can come up to the dialog to select that. And again, we're going to use the modot.xml file. In here, once the dialog pops open, we've got the rules file selected. Again, this is a rule job, so we're going to use 8% for a max. Again, the L selection is the only option that we have, so we're going to go with that one. Design speed on this ramp will be 50 miles per hour, so we're going to switch that down to 50. We're going to do the pivot method on the right edge, which is that one right there. And again, what that means is the baseline is running along here, and it is on the right edge of the superelevation shape, and that's the edge that we want this all to rotate about. Okay, and then when we're done, we're going to open up the editor and see what kind of superelevation we get. So now all I have to do is just left click through all these options, and it will go ahead and calculate my superelevation. Now you'll know a couple things. The editor pops up, plus your superelevation shape gets colorized, and it changes color based on the steepness of the superelevation values. So let's take a look at our superelevation editor and look at page 629. It's kind of pointing out that the superelevation rates for both lanes are identical, which makes sense the way we set up our lanes for the section, and we had to do that in order for this superelevation to calculate correctly. Now later on we're going to show you how we're going to manipulate this and basically remove one of these lanes, because all we need to make the superelevation work correctly with the template is an 18-foot wide lane. We got the values calculated, and we're going to adjust those to match that 18-foot lane. Now we're moving on to page 630, and on page 630 it wants us to go ahead and modify one of the lanes with the superelevation editor, and what we're going to do is we're going to delete the entire row with the station value 17 or 11 plus 17.9. And we're going to do that in the 0 to 6 foot lane. So we're right here. And this is the lane or the row that they want us to delete. So all you have to do is highlight the row, right click, or actually highlight the row, and then just hit the X in the upper part of the tool here. And when you do that, you'll see that that row gets deleted. And then we're going to adjust the stationing of this row again here to have a positive 2% slope. Currently it's a negative 2%, so we're just going to highlight that area there, and we're just going to type in a 2. We're going to tab, and you'll notice that the superelevation shape in the diagram up here changes. It used to follow this red line, and that's one thing I want to point out that it's not in the manual, but there are two superelevation control lines in this dialog, and if you right click you can just edit the display list here, and you can either turn them off or just turn one or the other on. So if we do none and we hit apply, they disappear. If we hit one here and hit apply, that one only turns on. If we turn that, select that and hit apply, that one turns on. So just be aware that you can turn these on and off, these superelevation control lines they're called. We're done with our editing. We're going to go ahead and close that down. Another way you can view the profile is in a new tool that they created for Open Roads designers, the Open Superelevation View. It's the icons right here on the tools up here, or you can get them from the actual heads-up tools on the Superelevation section. So if I select on this section, I can slide over to Open Superelevation Model. First thing it's going to ask for is to open up a view, so I'm going to go to my view number 8. I'm going to select in that window there. And I'm going to go ahead and maximize this to make it large, and I'm going to go ahead and fit the view, and I'm going to hit F4, and now you can select on the profile itself and you can see values pop up, and these values are editable. You can just select them and modify them, and that works for both profile control lines. Again, we're going to kind of demonstrate on step number 13 there that we can modify the profile in this view. So again, what it wants us to do this time is we're going to go ahead and delete the 0 to 6 foot superelevation lane, and that's this top one here. If you just hover over it, you can get the name to pop up, and you can see that it's the 0 to 6 foot lane for the ramp 4 alignment. And so all you have to do is left click on that, bring up the heads up tools, and then just delete. What we're left with is the lane that's from 6 foot to 18 foot over. And if I would close down my superelevation profile model here and go back to my plan view, you'll see that that lane has disappeared. Or not disappeared, but it was deleted, and so it's not being viewed anymore. So what we're left with again is just the 6 foot to 18 foot lane, and that's what you should have after deleting that first lane. Now the next thing I need to do on page 632 is we're going to go into the properties of this superelevation lane, and it wanted us to stay in that profile model, so I'm going to go ahead and open that back up. I'm going to go over to my superelevation model. I'm going to go back down to view number 8. I'm going to click in there again and place it. So we're going to go ahead and click on the profile control line, and I'm going to go to the heads up tools properties, and in step number 14 we're going to go ahead and change the inside edge offset of the remaining shape that's out there. We're going to change it from 6 to 0, and then we're going to change the width to 18 to match our template. You'll notice if I go back out after I close this down that then the shape is now a full 18 foot wide, and the way you can check that is if you come over to the very beginning, you click on the superelevation section and you zoom in, you'll see that the width has changed. Okay. Now on page 633, step 15, it's just stating that all those edits that we did, whether it was in the superelevation editor or the profile, could all have been done by just coming into this file here, clicking on the section and modifying the heads up little settings that we have on this shape. So everything we did before could be done in this view here. In step number 16, it wants us to select the superelevation shape, not the section line, but the shape, and using the heads-up tools, adjust the shape name to 0 to 18 foot. So we're going to go ahead and select the shape and move around a little bit. Once you select it, you'll get some heads-up tools here. We're going to go into the properties once again, and in these properties we can actually change the name where we couldn't do that before with the profile model. So we're going to go ahead and change the 6 to a 0, and we're just going to left click. So now if we hover over that, we should see the name change. To match the slope of the Route 54 pavement at the end of the ramp 4, we're going to select the superelevation shape and adjust the slope of the shape at the following two stations in step number 17. So we're going to go ahead and go down closer to the end of the superelevation. We're going to select the section. We're going to adjust this value here and this value here, because the ramp 54 superelevation has a 2% coming down from the Route 54 baseline, and this one's going down from the ramp 4, so it's going in the wrong direction. So we're going to change this one to be a positive 2%, and then we're going to come over here and change this one to be a positive 2 as well. In the next step, we're going to apply this superelevation to our corridor. So we're going to go ahead and open up our corridors file by doing a File, Open, Browse. We're going to select our corridor file in Data 6. We're going to check in the superelevation file. Once the corridors file opens up, we're going to go ahead and zoom in to the ramp 4 corridor. And in here, I'm going to make sure I can see a corridor grip for ramp 4. We've got some Route 54 corridor grips, and here's the ramp 4 corridor grips. They're much shorter than the 54 corridor. And so in this, we're going to go ahead and reference in, now we're going to go ahead and reference in the superelevation file. So we're going to go back to our Home tab here. We're going to go to the Reference Attach Tools. We're going to go ahead and do a Tools Attach, and we're going to reference in that superelevation file. To apply the superelevation, we're going to go back to our corridors location or tab, and we're going to slide over to the Calculate button, and in there's a tool to assign to corridor. You could use that button, or if you go to the corridor grip itself and click on it, you can go over to the hammer tool and slide down to the very bottom, which is Assign Superelevation to Corridor. So we'll go ahead and do it this way. We'll click on it. Since it knows the corridor, I don't have to select it. It's going to ask for locating the superelevation section. We only have one. It's this one right here. We're going to select it, and we're going to reset to complete. When it pops up, since we modified the superelevation shape to be 18 foot wide, it's going to use the 2 points that we have available to the superelevation tool. This dialog is adjustable. You can make it bigger and adjust these columns so you can see what points it's using to pivot about. So it's going to pivot about our origin point, which is the concrete TCL, which is right at the baseline location, and then the edge of pavement, which is 18 foot over, is the left concrete TEOP, and so that's going to be the superelevation point, and this is going to be the pivot point. And when we hit OK to this, it's going to create a point control that's going to adjust our cross slope of our pavement. So we'll go ahead and select OK to that. And before I show you, well, let's go ahead and show you the superelevation. To do that, and this is on page 636, step 25, we're going to open up the cross-section view. To do that, we're going to go ahead and select the corridor grip and try to get the heads-up tools to pop open. We're going to slide over to the second icon here. We're going to go to Open Cross-Section Model. Again, it's wanting us to open up a view, so we're going to go back to view number 8. And all I got to do is left click in that view there. And what it'll do is it'll put a cross-section view of ramp 4 in this view. And if we want to go to a different section, all we have to do is go up here to this area here. We can come in here and type in a section, or we can just use the little VCR controls here and start navigating through our section. Now there are some options here for the view properties. You can center on backbone, center on current offset, so if you zoom in to a certain location, it should stick to that zoom location if you have this center on current offsets turned on, like so. Now the other cool thing about this Superelevation or this cross-section view is you can actually distort the view by holding your control key down and using your scroll key. By doing so, you can kind of zoom in and out with the scroll key, but if you hold your control key down, you can control it, and you can exaggerate it horizontally. If you hold your shift key down, you can exaggerate it vertically. So just be aware of that. The other thing that you can do, which is very nice, you can actually place temporary dimension lines, which is what they're wanting us to do in step 25. So all you have to do is just right click and hold, and when you do that, you'll get some options that pop up. And again, you want to right click and hold in a blank area, and when you do that, you'll get the options. And the first line that we're going to place is a horizontal temporary dimension line, and so once you select that option, it's going to kind of navigate to the closest point on the surface. And so we're just going to go from the origin point out to the edge of pavement, and we're just going to left click, and you can see it shows us our Superelevation has been applied because this template had just a default 2% slope on it. And if you navigate through the sections, you should see that Superelevation change as you go up and down through the sections. And so if we keep on going down through the sections, you'll see we're coming out of the full super and we're going to go down to a 2% slope. Now something that they've added new to this year is a vertical dimension line. So I'm going to go ahead and come down a few sections here, and I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to place a vertical dimension line and say I want to know how high my wall is. I'm going to come up here and select my wall, and I'm going to come down here to the bottom of the wall, and I'm going to come out here to the left and place it, and I can actually calculate the height of my wall now, which is something again new for Open Roads Designer. So with that, that's pretty much the first exercise in chapter 6. We did the Superelevation for Route 50, Superelevation for Ramp 4. The next exercise or next video will talk about creating Superelevation for the Route 54 alignment.